Hello and welcome to Get Yourself Optimized. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, and today I'm super excited to have Howard Getson with us. Howard is a hedge fund investor. He runs a hedge fund and he runs the data science company that powers it. Capitalogix created a revolutionary financial technology platform that uses adaptive AI to maximize performance with real-time insights. In this episode, we're going to be talking about AI and how it can impact so much of your life, the economy, and financial systems, and potentially your retirement. Howard, it's so great to have you on the show.
Yeah, it's terrific to be here. Obviously, we've known each other for many years, and I've always kind of labeled you a techno geek in my head, right? I mean, you wrote this book on SEO. You talk about cybersecurity, all sorts of tools, and yet when I listen to your podcasts and look at the stuff you write, you're focused on personal development and the softer side. What happened to you?
Well, I'll tell you, I have been in love with personal development ever since I went to a Tony Robbins event in 2009, and it changed my life. So, yeah, this podcast is all about improving oneself, and that includes not only your mindset and kind of what's going on the inside, but it also has to do with your relationship, your finances and wealth and business. It's a pretty all-encompassing podcast. So,
Well, I totally agree and share a lot of that. Interestingly, I got involved in a Tony Robbins type world way back in 2004. I had one of the first investors in this company uh, basically said to me, I'll invest in your company, uh, but I want a handshake deal that says if I give you good advice, you'll take it. And as well, if you give me good advice, of course I'll take it. He says, no, no, really, I want you to understand. I know how smart you are, and I know how focused you are on what you know. But if I talk to you about something that I know, I you, you don't have to take it, but you have to listen and try. And I said, okay. And he said, shake my hand. So I shake his hand,
I like this
and he
guy
says,
already.
and he said, all right, I want you to go to a Tony Robbins seminar with me. And I said, the shallow Hal guy? And he said,
Exactly.
wait,
Yeah,
wait.
yeah.
I just said, are you gonna take my advice? If I know something you don't. And I said, all right, I'll go to a Tony Robbins seminar. And he says, it's next week. I said, next week? And um, he said, yeah, in Brisbane, Australia.
No way.
So I'm a person that keeps my word. I buy the ticket to Gold Coast, Brisbane, Australia, and I undertake this like 5 day date with destiny process,
Oh, that's
which
his
is
best
his
event.
most intense.
Yeah.
Um, but it turns out I loved it and signed up for the Platinum Partner Program and did it for 3 years.
Oh, me too.
Uh, and I'm still friendly with a whole bunch of those people. And I believe that that probably had more to do with my personal operating system than the inner tubes got crossed between there and here. Um, anyway, I kind of look at my life in terms of personal, professional, and business. And for me, personal is kind of me, my mindsets, my family, the way that I think and learn, the way that I know things, um, the rules, the coding that makes up me. Um, Professional is my career, and that's me and my role of what I do. But the business is the business. Um, and I'll tell you that strategic coach has been probably the biggest. catalyst on the business and professional side. In many respects, it's personal as well, but I'll give the nudge to Tony Robbins. I really believe he's done an amazing job of continuing to learn, to curate information from all these diverse sources and explain it in a way that's actionable for mere humans.
Yeah.
It even occurs to me that on some level, generations from now, people will look at what he did and they'll consider him a religious figure, because so many people have not committed suicide or turned their life around. They'll say he performed miracles. If you've ever been to one of the seminars, it's amazing. So.
Yeah, it's incredible. I was a Platt for 3 years myself, and I loved it. It changed my life in so many ways. I look completely different than I used to. I don't know if I have ever shown you my before photo, but this is fun. So this was prior to attending my first event of Tony's. It was 2009. It was UPW. And this was what I looked like prior to that event. This was actually a couple years prior to that. That was me.
Wow.
Yeah, a little different. And then, yeah, the rest was history. But that wasn't even the biggest impact I had in my life, was the physical makeover. Because I did literally look unrecognizable. People wouldn't recognize me at conferences. I would speak at a lot of SEO and online marketing conferences, and they didn't recognize me. I'd walk up to a group of people I knew, and they wouldn't know who I was until they saw my badge. It was really fun. Of course, those days are long past. Everybody knows me as how I look now. But the internal changes, my spiritual changes, my relationship changes have been so profound, much more so even than the physical. And it all stems from Tony. And I met my wife at a date with destiny. I had a spiritual awakening at a Platt trip in India, his oneness trip, which was incredible. I got touched on the head by a monk who zapped me, gave me a Diksha, oneness blessing, and I saw everything in Technicolor, and I felt this deep sense of peace and connection. And I was agnostic my whole life up until that point. Yeah, big difference.
Well, it turns out that I think how people think, how people know, how people code things probably is one of the most important variables, or it's a series of important variables that control the quality of your life. And whether your life is heaven or hell has a lot to do with whether you feel like you're blessed or cursed.
Yeah.
And from a business standpoint, that's actually a big reason I got involved in AI. Is, wouldn't it be cool to evaluate the way people think and learn and know things so that they make better decisions, ultimately take better, smarter actions, and comparatively continue to raise the bar and improve performance, right? Tony talks about constant, never-ending improvement,
Yeah.
but really, the best businesses aren't businesses that don't have problems. Only companies that cease to exist stop having problems. The goal is to have an increasing quality of problem.
Yes.
And really, AI is a way to accelerate that. I make a joke that AI is a good substitute for lack of the real thing, right? So like, I have another one. We have a little piece of artwork on the wall that says AI is cool, artificial stupidity is scary. But when people ask how I got started in AI, I think it it really stems back to something traumatic in my childhood. And it's crazy how many people are impacted by things that happened a long, long, long time ago.
Yeah.
Everybody deals with their own stuff. There's an old Yiddish story that says if everybody came to the center of town and unloaded their baggage and you could see the things that each person is dealing with, everybody would pick their own back up because each is so horrible in and of itself. For me, I had a brother who died when I was very young. And it turns out that I had told my mother that the nanny who was taking care of us was mistreating us. She would lock me in the basement. She mistreated us. But I was young and my mom didn't believe me. A few weeks later, my brother ends up dead. It's traumatic, lots of bad stuff.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, but the concept is, how did somebody decide not to pay attention? How did we not know to take the right action? You know, on one hand, I was young. On the other hand, there's signal and there's noise. I'll go to Tony for a minute. One of the most important things that happened to me at a Tony Robbins event was I had a few minutes alone with him. We were in Venice, walking from a hotel to the event location, and he said, "How are things going?" You know, whatever. And he says, "Hey, you know, I noticed you were working on, you know, this, that, or the other. And one of the things I was working on was a way to have a better relationship with my mother. My relationship with her had been strained for years." And he asked me a question. He said, when a warrior knows the battle's over, what does he say to his opponent? And I thought about it for a minute. And I said, "Go in peace." And as I said it, you know, you talked about how when you had the Diksha, the blessing, how, like, you know, you felt physical things. It was almost like the Matrix, where I felt a part of me, I don't know, loosening, unclenching. Go in peace. The fight's over. The concept that he was doing there was called archetypes. And in a sense, as you play a different role, the best next step is different. The warrior wants to fight. The lover wants to love. The hand of the king wants to advise. These archetypes are common in almost everything. This actually relates to AI. It's one of the coolest things about AI is that you can solve a problem mathematically, statistically, using behavioral economics or utility function or common sense. Each one of those solutions might be different. Wouldn't it be cool to evaluate each of those potential answers using different grades and figure out which one's actually going to produce the best result? And so instead of simply saying, what's the best next step or what's the right answer, you recognize that there's no such thing as a singular right answer. In the context of trading, is the best system the one that made the most money going back to the beginning of the data set? Is it the one that lost the least money? Is it the one that had the best risk-adjusted return? Was it the one that lost the least money during the crash of 2008? Is it the one that's going to help you make the most money now? Each of those choices is going to determine a different outcome if you were to try to search for it. And archetypes do the same thing. It's what role allows you to create the best outcome. And then the question is, for you, for others, for everyone. And it's actually what makes AI so hard. is there's no such thing as like AIing a problem. You can't like look at a business and say, I'm going to AI that. You kind of have to look at the different functional components. Every business can be looked at as a process that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And it's weird to think about your business like that, but the thing you do, there has to be a first thing you do, and there has to be a last thing you do. What is it? And most people, when they give me an answer, they then 3 minutes later say, that wasn't really the first thing, because before I do that, and it's really kind of confusing. But if you think about the process and say, well, I'm not going to get it right, but at least I can bring some order to the chaos, you start to think about the functional components. And if I said, hey, think of your business in terms of the top 3 functional components, you could probably break it into 3. But if I said break it into 5, you could break it into 5 too. So then if I say, all right, so here are the 5 base things we do. Let's take the first one of these components. Is there any low-hanging fruit where in that one component, what are the ways we solve it? And it could be this way or this way or this way. What new capability would unlock a whole new set of possibilities? And you do the same thing for each of the different components. And you end up with a mess. You end up with a lot of stuff that you could do. But then you start to say, if I were to think about a score and I were to rank the decisions, there's something in statistics called a value chain, where as you look through the different steps of the process, you can weight the probabilities, and basically the goal is to make decisions so that you have the highest probability times the highest probability times the highest probability, and you're trying to capture the greatest real-time expectancy score at the end. And in a sense, it's what you're trying to do in life as you try to go to the right school or pick the right mate or have the right job or live in the right city. And the changes or the choices that you make early in your life dramatically impact the results that you get later. It's crazy to think how where you decided to go to school or the person you decided to marry or the peer group you joined touched and changed so many things. In a sense, they're variables that proximately relate to the outcome. And in AI or life, there's almost infinite variables. The goal is to figure out which ones to pay attention to that get you the most leverage, the most agency or degrees of control to impact outcomes.
Yeah. You know, Tony talks about distinctions and how the being able to uncover these distinctions can make the difference between an outstanding life and just a good life, right? And one distinction I just recently learned that takes what you're describing to a bit of a spiritual level is the concept of the most benevolent outcome. This is from a guy named Tom Moore, an author and very spiritual guy. And this concept is simply this, that you can't know all the different variables. You can't know how everybody is impacted. And so when we're praying for somebody's healing, or we're praying for a war to end, or something to change or shift, we're just looking at the surface level. We don't see the bigger picture. And the thing that's happening could be for everybody's best interest. That war that killed a certain number of people may have stopped a much larger war that would have killed 100 times that number of people. We don't know that. We just can't see all that. So praying for the most benevolent outcome takes into account all those different potential futures and all the different myriad ways that people can be impacted, and lots of people. So if you pray for the healing of your family member in a way that you're asking for the most benevolent outcome for that person and for everyone involved, you don't have to figure out all the different ways people are touched. You just have essentially the universal AI figure that out for you, which is a really interesting concept.
In Strategic Coach, they have a concept called strategic byproducts. Mm-hmm. And while you're working on your core business or the thing that you think is your core business, you ultimately end up developing these other capabilities, these strategic byproducts. And oftentimes, if you think about them not as the exhaust of your other process, but instead a valuable resource, you recognize that by focusing on that, it may lead you to something better. What you're talking about is the hidden gift or the unintended consequence. But really, it's even something that I'll simply label or something better. And I think it's incredibly important in life or business because for your whole career, this concept of getting better and focusing more narrowly on your unique ability or the thing that you're awesome at that gives you energy is something that you get rewarded for. And you become increasingly focused on a narrower and narrower subset of possibility. And on one hand, you're rewarded with money and increased status and stature and standing in your industry, but it comes at a huge cost. And the huge cost is that you could have done something else. It's the lost opportunity cost of or something better. And the same problem is seen in AI, where if you're only focused on this one outcome, you forget that by looking at the problem a different way or using a different set of data or a different process, you may end up with something that not only is better, but makes that other problem irrelevant. It's like a new operating system avoids the whole path and gives you a whole new set of possibilities. And there has to be a way to grade not only the efficiency or the effectiveness or the certainty of the outcome, but of the long-standing benefit. So it's not just about doing something with less time or less effort or with a higher probability of winning, but did you play the right game? Did you win the prize that you wanted to win? It's like saying if you can pick up $100 bill, why not do it? And if there's a $1,000 bill next to it, maybe it's better to pick up the $1,000 bill rather than the $100 bill.
Yeah.
Most people are so functionally fixed on what they decided that they forgot that it was a prior version of themselves looking at a prior version of the world with a prior set of rules that chose that target. And the real question is, thinking forward about what you really want, is that really the target you'd choose? Or is there something better?
Yeah. Makes me think that maybe there is a version of the most benevolent outcome that you can program into an AI, that it takes everything into account, the externalities, the things that aren't normally considered part of the input set or the decision-making criteria.
I actually believe that's one of the things that's coming. If you think about a spiritual practice, even meditation, one of the things you're supposed to be able to do is disassociate yourself, right? One of the fundamental precepts of Buddhism is non-attachment, right? Not to yourself, to outcomes, But it's this concept of, instead of being associated in so closely with what's happening, that the outcome is you and you are the outcome, that you can be the watcher. You can be mindful and you can, in a sense, see what's happening.
Mm.
With AI, I really believe that as AI becomes more and more powerful, it's becoming more mindful, because it can solve things or evaluate things different ways, and then look at those different ways and consider, but which one is better. And it's still artificial in a sense that it's not organic, um, but it's getting there. It's funny, as I have some of these thoughts, I think about the fact that we think of ourselves as this body, but no cell in your body was there 20 years ago. Everything has regenerated in a sense. Um, and so much of what you are is bacteria and water and, RNA and DNA. And there's just all these parts of you that somehow come together, and we say, oh, human or me. Um, but really, at a microscopic level, you're not really you. And I think about AI, and there's really no such thing as AI. Um, there's thousands of equations and algorithms and automations and methods, and it's not like there's this one AI that rules them all. It's almost like a Rube Goldberg machine, where you see, like, you knock down the domino, which knocks down other dominoes, which makes the mousetrap go, that makes the ball go down the slide, which knocks over the bowling pin, that sets off that's
I love those,
really
by the way,
kind of
and
what
I love
automation
those
is.
music videos from OK Go that have those Rube Goldberg machines in them too.
Yeah, but that's what automation or your business kind of sort of is. Um, I've developed a hedge fund that's 100% autonomous AI, but I actually look at a lot of the little automations as separate who's. There's another strategic coach concept that was really developed by Dean Jackson. It was called Who Not How, and it says, instead of trying to figure out how to do something, think about the who that does that thing as their unique ability. They're not only superior at skill, it gives them energy and they become masterful. And rather than trying to create a weak substitute for masterful, why not partner with the best masterful who's? And I had an epiphany one day that said, a who doesn't have to be a physical embodiment. We can create AI or automation to be the perfect who.
Mm.
Um, if you're a simplifier and you're looking to multiply, technology can be the multiplier. But if you've got almost infinite data and you need to figure out where's the signal within all that noise, AI can be the simplifier. And you just have to break it down the right way. But I can create a who that doesn't fight with their spouse, doesn't have a drinking problem, didn't get a poor night's sleep, wasn't 5 minutes late. Um, and you can create much greater certainty and control by figuring out, if there's something that I've done the same way in business for, let's say, 6 months, chances are the practical realities of time, technology, competition, innovation mean it's not really the best way. It might be the best way for me because it's so easy and it becomes automatic or automatistic. But it's really an opportunity to say, anything that's not really my unique ability is something that I ought to delegate, automate, or outsource? And how can I find as many of those different things as possible so that it frees me up to lift my chin and focus on something better? And if we continue to think about or something better, and what does that allow the business to become? I was thinking about succession plans recently. I was buying some key man insurance. I was thinking about, I'm 58. My oldest son is about to have what will be my first grandchild. And I started thinking, I'm not ready to retire, but I ought to start thinking about a succession plan. And I started thinking, what does the word succession mean? And to me, it means to go past or to go beyond, right? But that concept of who, not how, the concept of saying I can automate or I can create technology that goes beyond the human means that, in a sense, I'm getting beyond the entrepreneur. If I'm the constraint in business, we have to go beyond it. I don't want my limitations to be the limitation of my business. I want to create opportunity and recognize possibility. For me, I recognize opportunity, talent, and resources. And it's not just recognizing, you have to attract and multiply. But if I'm doing stuff that's lower level, then I'm not spending those cycles doing the thing that would be more valuable. And so it becomes important not to automate everything, not even to automate this thing that you've decided is important. But it might be that you automate something that wastes your time or is a blocker for you to think about something else. And by doing that, it creates the space or the clearing for you to then focus on something different or automating the next level. But you don't have to get everything right. You just have to make progress.
Yeah. But what about when AI gets so much smarter than us that it's 1,000 times smarter than the smartest human? That's coming fast, according to Ray Kurzweil.
Well, not just according to Ray Kurzweil.
Yeah, of course. But he's the one who comes to mind with these predictions and the years that have been in place for decades now that he's come up with pretty accurate predictions so far.
So I've created kind of a framework that I use internally, and I think it's a good time to talk to you about it. But before I do, I want to pre-frame you by asking you a question.
Okay.
It's really everybody listening, and I'll give you a few seconds after I answer to think about it. But think about 3 things, innovations or technical catalysts or something new, 3 things that you believe are going to dramatically impact your industry in the next 3 to 5 years. Okay, don't answer yet. Just think for like 3 seconds. The next step to this is to say, now imagine 3 things that haven't been invented, but you know is inevitable, right? Or likely inevitable, that'll change your business over the next 5 to 10 years, right? And I look at that as having a map before you get lost in the woods. These are not things that you have to build. This is the territory, right? In NLP, they say the map is not really the territory. But on the other hand, it's a guidepost. And so the concept here is, if you understand that the natural path is going to go from here to there, the question is, knowing that that's the likely future in the next 3 to 5 years and then the next 5 to 10 years, what new capability should you focus on that starts to make progress in the right direction so that you're using your unique ability and your ability to imagine this future And instead of fighting Mother Nature, you're leveraging it. It's way easy to leverage a force of nature rather than to fight it. And as long as you don't believe that you have to create those step changes, but just take advantage of it, you've got a real leg up, because so many people are wasting time and cycles trying to defend the way they currently do something or to have it decay slower. And what this is letting you do is imagine, let's just use a metaphor here. In 1849, that was the gold rush to San Francisco. And everybody was going to look for gold. A lot of the speculators found gold and changed their life. But a whole bunch of the people who got rich weren't the speculators. It was the people who recognized that there was a gold rush, and they opened hotels and bars and stores that sold picks and shovels, because there was this manifest destiny migration west, right? So for me, exponential thinking and exponential technologies is inevitable. AI is not something that you can say, well, it might catch on. Very few companies are really using it meaningfully. They're using the lowest level automations. But on the other hand, AI is now good enough that it's capable of almost anything specific. It's not a general intelligence. It's not capable of lots of stuff, but I can find certain techniques, certain tools, certain ways to improve almost anything, whether it's the discovery of a drug or a credit card, using it to detect fraud in your account in a way that a human never could have, or a doctor using it to evaluate your DNA, the biometric data that's being collected from some wearable, and to figure out this, that, or the other. The bottom line is, I know inevitably that is going to continue. I also know that access to data is going to continue to get easier. But if you're using the same data and the same process as everybody else, you don't really have an edge. But if you can use different data or a different process, you really can create that asymmetric advantage. These are not things that I'm going, gee, this might be true. These are things that ultimately are inevitable.
Right.
And it's not even something I have to invent. It's something I get to take advantage of. So the question is, knowing stuff like that, what new capability helps me do what I already do better? It has to answer the question, so what, who cares? The caveman part of your mind with a new capability, if it doesn't help you do what you already do better, you say, so what, who cares, and you move on. But the right capability, if you make a list of these capabilities and you're starting to say, so there's my long-term roadmap. It's the 3 things that I believe are destined to impact my industry over the next 3 to 5 years. And then here's a couple things that I kind of suspect are inevitable in the next 5 to 10. What new capability starts to unlock a whole new set of potential for me? Yeah. And the way I look at it is, I look at the different things that I write down as potential capabilities, and I say, if I really had that, would it satisfy my desire? And I'm not looking for the ones that satisfy the desire. I'm looking for the ones that make me hungry for even more. The thing where if I knew I could do that, I would go, but couldn't I do that and that? Those are the ones, because we're not predicting technology, we're predicting human nature. We're saying, since the beginning of time, humans have been confronted with new disruptive capabilities, but human nature hasn't changed much. So in a prediction model, don't focus on all the things that change, focus on the thing that doesn't change. Human nature won't. If I can anticipate what people are going to want in my industry, and that by giving them that capability makes them want more, I know I'm on the path. So a capability is something that I can do, right? Something that I can create, and it helps me do something that I already know. Again, more efficiently, more effectively, with more certainty. But if it opens the desire, think of the capability as a Lego. I want a Lego that makes me want to build something, not just look at the Lego, but say, ooh, I have a blue one. Let me put it with the yellow one or the red one. And if I do it this way, I can create this. So the next step is a prototype. And the prototype in the 80-20 rule is the 20% of something. It's that the quickest, dirty, minimum viable something that makes me hungry for the product. It's the thing that, instead of it just being me evaluating, it's probably me and my team accomplishing something that I already know, but it's like we took this new capability and we added this, and all of a sudden I went, wow, this is so good. If it's this good for my team, wouldn't it be cool if we create a product? Each one of these is a massive scale opportunity, and the product is where you get people you don't know to accomplish the thing you do know. The reason it's so much more scale is that it's not limited to you. But then there's a scale beyond that, and that's the platform. And that's where this capability is so valuable that people want to build on it. And it's where people you don't know use it for things you didn't anticipate. And so in a sense, they're saying that capability is so cool. Let me come to you with ideas or money, and I want to create a variation on a theme for real estate. Or, wow, if I could just use that GPT-3 model for headlines. Or no, not headlines, to fact check something. No, not for fact checking, but SEO. No, not for that, but and so as you start to imagine the roadmap to the future, the best way to grow your business is to think about how a capability becomes a prototype, becomes a product, can become a platform that enables that future migration that you know is inevitable.
Yeah. So you're skating to where the puck is going to be, to use Wayne Gretzky quote. And also, it occurs to me that you should be looking very critically at your strategic byproducts to see if maybe those are more valuable to that potential or inevitable future than your core products are currently.
That's the whole point. So I've got a whole presentation about basically that same concept. And the real point of that is that in my hedge fund, so much of the last 10 years has been spent thinking about how do I maximize the return in the hedge fund. And then one day I thought about it and I was like, I'm focused on the golden egg, not the goose that lays the golden egg. The strategic byproduct is, in trying to automate my hedge fund, I created this insight engine, this platform that amplifies intelligence and lets you make better decisions, take smarter actions, continually improve performance. And why not? Why limit that? This is that concept of focus. I was so focused on the hedge fund that it came at the cost of every other thing that I could do with it. So if I could build a hedge fund, why not build hedge funds for other people, or mutual funds or ETFs or other financial products, or even use it in VC to say, let's look at your portfolio. And as you make one investment, is it better to hedge your bet by making a bigger or smaller investment in the same space, an adjacent space, or a totally reciprocal or different space? Anyway, the concept is easy to understand. Let me make an offer to your group. Anybody who's listening, I realize that we're coming to the end of our podcast, and we haven't really discussed this fully. If they text AI to 972-992-1100. So just the letters AI to 972-992-1100. I'll send them the presentation in the form that talks about how thoughts become things, or how capabilities become prototypes, become products, become platforms. And they'll also end up getting a weekly list of the news links. It's very similar to your newsletter, where you send out the 5 things that you
my
found
Thursday 3. Yeah.
So for me, I send out 20 links about kind of business and technology, and 20 links about business and markets.
And those are great, by the way. I get your newsletter.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. So anyway, I'll send your guests the forms to start working on how thoughts become things, and also get them signed up for that newsletter. But AI is at the beginning of, for me, it's a true north compass heading for 25 years, where I can't imagine amplified intelligence not being at the focal point of what's changing business for the next 25 years, which at my age is kind of the next or biggest portion of my remaining business life. So it's one of those things that I believe is inevitable. But what's not inevitable is how you choose to use it. There's a model: winter, spring, summer, and fall, right? I mean, it's not so much a model as a law of nature. But you can use it to evaluate businesses or cycles. And I think almost anybody would say it's springtime for AI. But it's not springtime for AI for you if you're not thinking about how to use it. The law of the farm says you have to plant the seed before you water it, before it grows, before you can harvest.
Right.
And so you're going to suck at the beginning, but you have to start to become aware of things before you can start to make finer distinctions, before you can become masterful.
Yeah, you got to be in it to win it.
Yeah, you got to play the game. I heard a joke. There was this pious lady that prayed to God every day, "Oh, please let me win the lottery." And she did amazing things her whole life. And one day, God comes down to earth and meets the lady and says, "At least buy a ticket."
That's awesome.
Anyway,
that reminds me of an A3.
Start thinking about this. And also, I'll just tell you, I've written a book called Next on Wall Street, Understanding AI's Inevitable Impact on Markets and Trading. It isn't out yet, but I did the book with Tucker Max and their Scribe Media. It's being edited right now. It's written, so I think it'll come out soon. But I've enjoyed your podcast. I've enjoyed spending time with you, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, me too. I remember this quote from Peter Diamandis that I heard at Abundance 360, which was, there are going to be 2 types of businesses at the end of this decade. Businesses who use AI at their core, and businesses who are out of business. What do you think about that?
I think it's like electricity or the internet. I don't think you think about which companies use electricity. And I think people not connected to the internet is a choice, so that something is air gapped. I think at a certain point it becomes assumed.
Yeah.
At a certain point, why would you do business with a business who has intentionally limited its capabilities? Again, to sign up for the newsletter, just text AI to 972-992-1100, and it'll help you start to think about places where you can start to plant your seeds and think about the future.
Yeah, awesome. And I'll include that phone number in the show notes for this episode as well. And one last thought to leave our listener or viewer with is this important truism I learned from Perry Marshall in his 80-20 book, and that is that the 80-20 rule is fractal. So in other words, there's an 80-20 of the 80-20. 4% of what you do will produce 54% of the value.
Well, and it works the other way too. Fractal is getting smaller and smaller, but also bigger. And the concept is that as you develop a technology like the Insight engine, that might be your business. So for Tesla, the battery, that clean power, will be a company bigger than what you currently see Tesla. Or in SpaceX, the Starlink capability that lets a rocket communicate with Earth from far away will become the new AT&T of the universe and will connect worlds. Most people think they're going to make their money in rockets, but they might make more money with that than they do with anything else. And their rockets may end up being the delivery service interplanetary. And so it's not so much about travel as transportation. But the concept is that you have to consider the possibilities on a fractal basis. So fewer and fewer of your activities are really where your unique ability is, but bigger and bigger the opportunities become. In order for something to be a platform, you've got to choose the right capability, and you have to make it simple enough and valuable enough that it's worth multiplying. So it works both ways, but I agree, it's totally fractal.
Yeah, I like that. I really like that. Okay, so listener, go take advantage of Howard's offer. Also, you can read his blog, which is at capitalogix.com/blog.
Yeah. No, it's blog.capitalogix.com. Well, let's put that link in there too.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing that. I always forget to mention, but I actually write that every week. I have a major assist from my son, Zach. I know you know Zach, but yep. Zach would tell you that he writes 60 to 70% of it, and I just add the, lipstick on the pig. But
or maybe it's 54% that he writes that creates, or no, that would be the other way. Whatever creates the most value, right?
He's actually done a great job of taking over most of that, and but it still is handwritten by Getson boys, at least at this point, until we train the AI to do it for us.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, Howard. Thank you, listener, and we'll catch you on the next episode. This is your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off.